Welcome to the Sistas Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Dannie M.
Hi, I'm your host, Aisya Carroll. Thank you so much for coming to the show tonight.
And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Dav Lewis. And for those who may not know who he is a public figure right here in Houston, Texas. And so, as you guys may have read, the title of this show, Dave, I'm going to let you give the title of this show.
The title of the show is I Was Sexually Assaulted by the Pastor. And title pretty much speaks for itself. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it's a very sensitive topic. So we want to thank you, Dave, for even trusting us enough to share this very vulnerable moment of your life with us right here on the show. And without further ado, I want you to let the audience know who you are, where you're from, and what you do, for the community.
Right. I'm from Texas originally. I grew up outside of Dallas in a small town called Carroll, Texas. Most of my family still lives there, and I spent my childhood all the way up into teenager, early adulthood in Texas, and then I spent the rest of my life in California, so Northern California, and then Southern California. Now I'm back in Houston. I've been in Houston for the last 3 years, and I spent a lot of time in Hollywood, acting, directing. So I've directed a award-winning film called Second Chances Life. And that's a film, well, it's called Second Chances, but I have an organization called Second Chances Life. But the film documents the lives of 3 Black men that spent almost 60 years incarcerated. And now those men are back out in the community, doing work in the community. And I also, I want to shout out to 2 of the guys from that film passed away in 2020. One from a car accident, Byron Mims, shout out to the Mims family. And then Antoine passed away from COVID a week before Christmas. And so it's been a year, like 2020 was a year. And I'm grateful for those 2 men for changing my life. They inspired me to move back to Texas, to move back to the state I'm from, to the communities I'm from, and to bring the work that I was doing in California to Texas and just help my own community. And so, what else? So I run an organization called Second Chances Life. And so what we do is we focus on reducing recidivism in the community. And we've been in Houston 3 years, been around 6 years as an organization. We've helped over 1,500 individuals and families in Houston with housing, jobs, education. Mental health is a big piece of ours. I'm the co-founder of Black Man Healing, which is a healing circle that we host. We've been hosting that since August, and it is phenomenal. And that's part of like the mental health piece, that we hold space for Black men to feel. Like, we give Black men permission to feel, which is something that we've never given ourselves permission to do in general. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Like, it's changed my life in so many ways, because I never thought I would experience Black men being vulnerable, Black men sharing, Black men being open, Black men saying, I love you to each other, Black men holding space for each other and building a strong brotherhood. And we host those once a month. We have one coming up next Saturday, which is March 6th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And it's open to any Black man, and it's free. And if you guys go to, you can go to my page, or you can go to Black Man Healing page on Facebook, and you'll see information on there where you can register for that as well. But so that's one of the new things that I've been doing. I've also, I'm one of the co-founders of Community Action Collective. And I lost one of my friends to police brutality in 2020. 2020 was a year, not just for me, but for a lot of people. It was the night of my birthday. Adrian Medeiros, today is actually his birthday. So Adrian, I know, I gained a guardian angel, several last year. I got so many ancestors that are driving me, pushing me, which is why I'm here today talking about this. But I stand on the shoulders of so many people in our community, so many Black men and Black women that don't have a voice, that didn't have a voice, that didn't get an opportunity to really share their story. And, you know, to see some of the things that we're seeing come to fruition today. And all this stuff has been affirming for me and my purpose. And when he passed away, I got together with several different organizations in Houston, Pure Justice, Texas Advocates for Justice, just so many more. There's so many, Mangrove Community, APR. I mean, there's so many organizations that we got together, and our main focus was on police brutality and looking at like, how do we save Black men and Black women on a local level? Last year, I think there was about seven people killed by the police in Houston. A lot of people don't know that. And this was before George Floyd. We were going before City Council, Mayor Turner, pressing these things. And Danielle, you and I talked about this stuff too. And when Adrian was killed by the police on a routine traffic stop, speeding, it changed my life, because you know it's a possibility that it'll happen to somebody you know at some point, if not you as a Black man or Black woman in this community. But when it does happen, you know, I can't explain to you really what that feels like. It's hard to explain it. And to the family, to the Medeiros family, like, shout out to y'all, to the Chavez family, to all the families that have lost people this year and the years before that to police brutality. We're fighting for you. And so we made some headway in Houston. A lot of different organizations and grassroots organizations are doing a lot of work. When we started looking at policy, the charter, and just trying to figure out like, what is the issue in Houston? And Houston didn't have a de-escalation policy in place. So not having a de-escalation policy in place, you can literally use excessive force, and the policy will protect you if you take someone's life. Houston didn't have a place on their website to complain. So if you had a issue with the police, you're talking about one of the biggest cities in the country, one of the biggest counties in the country. And up until August of 2020, there was nowhere for you as a citizen resident to go file you didn't know how to file a complaint, nowhere to go. And so those are some of the things. Now, if you go on HPD's website, it's on the front page now. And that's due to a lot of work that we did at Community Action Collective. They have a de-escalation policy in place that's required. Just a lot of small changes that we've been able to sort of push forward. I had an opportunity to look at the George Floyd bill. There's a George Floyd Act that they're pushing now around police reform on a federal level. So myself and the Floyd family and a couple of community leaders had an opportunity to look at the policy and just sort of give some feedback on that. This was in August of 2020. And so some of those things are still being pushed down. Shout out to a lot of organizations now, like the 13th Amendment. There's Abolish the 13th, Savannah Eldridge, David Johnson. They're a group of activists now that they have a bill now that has been drafted by some of the local state representatives. And that's to amend the 13th Amendment, which legalizes slavery. Mm-hmm. So right now, prison labor in a lot of states, it's free. So you're working in prison, you're making all this money for all these corporations, and you don't get a dime. And so it's basically the 13th Amendment legalizes slavery. And so even our prison systems are funding these corporations. And so that's just some of the work that I've been involved in. And the main thing for me too also is just making sure that I take care of myself, you know, because it is a lot of things and a lot of different directions, but it's all purposeful. It's all God's work, in my opinion. Like, I'm here right now in this very moment because this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, I don't believe any of this stuff is by mistake. I don't believe any of the things that happen to me have been by mistake. Like, this is all by design. It is, you know, and I receive it, you know, I respect it, I honor it. And that's why I'm here. You know, my goal, my mission has been to not only advocate for others, but advocate for myself. Like, be an advocate for myself, so people understand that nobody's going to save you. Like, nobody is going to save you most people don't care about anything that you got going on because everybody has their own things. They have their own issues. They have all these things going on, and you have to find a way to advocate for yourself. When you advocate for yourself, it's a lot easier for you to advocate for other people, you know? And so that's really my purpose. You know, I live in purpose. I'm grateful to be in a life of purpose. Like I wouldn't change a thing. Like I wouldn't change
I
a
love
thing.
it. Wow. I
Doing
mean,
amazing
guys,
things.
I know that was a lot of information, and he really is understating his efforts in the Houston area. I mean, I can remember like yesterday when you giving me the line to call in order to talk with the city council of Houston, when everything was just brewing, you know, after George Floyd, and we all waited for hours to give our speech. So it's not, I want you guys that are listening in the audience to know that what Dave does is serious work. It takes serious dedication. It takes an enormous amount of energy and patience in order to wait it out, to talk to the people that matter, to try to implement change. You know, this is all a process, and it takes many steps, and it takes many days, many months, sometimes years to see an inkling of change after all the energy has been expelled. You know, so kudos to you. Thank you so much for doing what you do, especially for the Houston community. And also, I want to echo what you said about the diversity here. The diversity here is off the charts, but yet we are still seeing brutality towards the Black and brown people of this city. And the question is why? You know, the head of police chief here is of brown descent. You know what I mean? So you would think that a lot of this would be handled respectfully. So I digress. We're going to move forward into what we came here to talk about. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about your book that you're getting ready to release. And when I saw the title, it just blew me away. And I was like, wait a minute, is this real? Is this fictitious? Or is this real, like nonfiction that Dave is writing? And I know the type of man you are. I knew immediately that this was real. Yeah. And as I'm reading through, you know, some of the comments that you attached to this post not too long ago, I was shocked. I was shocked that it happened to you in your adulthood. You know, most people who have these encounters, it often happens when they're young, when they're vulnerable, when they're unable to communicate what has happened to them. But the boldness, you know, that I felt from reading that post in the other party, so to speak, it perplexes me that someone would feel so free, you know, to offend the next, right? Without any type of repercussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's what you just said is one of the reasons why I wrote what I wrote. And it took me some time. I will say that, like, it took me 2 months to write that. It was originally 10, 12 pages long. And I got it down to 5 because there's so much more that I didn't put in that open letter to Black boys and men, because it's a lot for people to read anyway. In general, like that 5 pages, it's 1,500 words. It's so I did my best to tell the story and be as detailed as possible within 1,500 words, which was a challenge to do. So it took me a while. And then even writing it, you're having to relive it. I haven't talked to anybody about it. This is my first time actually having a conversation about what happened. And you relive those things every time you talk about it, every time you write it. So I had to take some time with, therapy, working through that. Because what you said is just the boldness, the audacity, inserting your privilege, your power on a grown man, and not to mention this is in public. This is in front of other people. This is not some private location, and also I'm stranger. You don't know anything that he does. man doesn't know if I'm married, doesn't know if I'm straight, doesn't know if I'm gay. He don't know anything about me.
But here's
Even
the
at that
kicker.
point.
The person who did this is married, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 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 100% married. And in very powerful positions, locally and also on a state level, federal level, connected to so many different people, and in a position where I'm not the only victim, by the way.
I was just gonna say, it sounds
Not
like
the only victim.
Yeah.
Not the only victim. There have been, I didn't even mention I didn't mention a name in my letter. And that week that I released that letter, I got over 15 different phone calls, text messages from people that just read the letter and the description matched the same thing that happened to them. And not to mention, there are families that have been destroyed. This man has done this to married men as well. And I released that letter because I talked to my family about this. I sought counsel about this, therapy. I did a lot of praying about it, a lot of meditation on it, because I knew I wasn't the only one. Like, I knew there was no way I was the only one where a man will violate another man in public, like in a public place, and be unapologetic about it in every sense of the way. All that told me was that you've done this before. And so I was in my head, I was like, what about other people, other men? What about kids? Are there kids that this is happening to?
Absolutely.
I mean, there were so many things that went through my head as I processed this, and I sort of went through the process and tried to figure out how to address this stuff. And I really do hope that people that read the letter, that have read it, pay attention to the criminal legal piece. How many times I had to go to the police station, how many times I had to follow up with HPD, how I also met with HPD leadership. And still to this day, I have not heard anything from HPD. To this day.
Let me ask.
Let's talk about that piece. Like, let's talk about.
I want to ask a question to that. Do you think that if you were a female, this would have been addressed immediately?
I can't say that. I think there's a lot of things that are in play here. You're talking about a pastor that's connected to politicians. You're also talking about a pastor that's connected to the police department. So let's be real. Let's be real. I mean, I've seen it. And that's also one of the reasons why I hope people pay attention to the criminal legal piece, because what if I was a person that was being abused over and over by this person? What if this was something that was constant?
Right.
What if the abuse was just something that was ongoing, and I'm sitting here screaming for help? I'm sitting here trying to advocate for myself. I'm sitting here trying to go through the criminal legal system, and these things continuing to happen. And let me tell you how important it is for these things to be addressed. Someone else was abused by this pastor on New Year's Eve, another Black man. So mine happened in September. The criminal legal system failed me. So in turn, another Black man that I know for a fact was abused on New Year's Eve at this pastor's house.
Wow.
And the wife was there. You know, so this is, I have no words. And so,
well, this is not an easy, it's not an easy topic. This just happened to you, you know. It hasn't even been a year. You know, it's very brave of you, number one, and two, it's very selfless of you to write this letter, an open letter, to our Black men and our Black boys. It's so greatly needed, you know. And like you said earlier, what about all the people who are constantly going through this type of abuse in silence? And then we wonder why the suicide rates are going up. You know, it's moments like this, it's situations like these is what may be provoking people to do it. We just don't know. A lot of people are suffering in silence. Kathy Tatum says, I've been complaining to HPD and went silent. So even women, if the person is protected, that's why CNN is so hush on a local level. Also, I failed to read to you earlier, Dave. You have a lot of supporters that are on tonight. You have Nate who says, proud of you, Dave, for your transparency. We have Kevin Rose who says, proud of you. And I know they mean it. You know, this, what you're doing tonight is not an easy thing to do at all. I mean, that really shows to who you are, you know, who you are spiritually. It shows your alignment. For most people, this would have knocked them off their rockers completely. Mm-hmm. You know, I love the fact that you said you understood that you needed to get counseling. That's something that I'm a huge advocate of in our community, especially our Black community. So I'm so thankful to hear you say that, because I know and I understand you will need it. You know?
Yeah, and these things have to be addressed. Like, we cannot keep turning a blind eye to the abuse that happens in the church by the leaders in the church. We cannot continue to be silent to things that harm Black men. Like, Black men, exactly what you said, suffer in silence and have suffered in silence for years. There's a victim that knew people would not believe him. He was abused by the same pastor 2 years ago. He left the church and he never filed a report, never done anything, because he knew nobody would believe him. And when I spoke to him, when he reached out to me, he told me, he said, I know who it is. And I said, who is it? He told me his name. I said, everybody that reached out to me knew exactly who I described in my email. I mean, in my letter. Every one of them, and they all had very similar stories to mine. Mine didn't go the abuse wasn't to the extent of theirs. Like, theirs was, God bless those brothers and all the pain and all the things. My heart goes out to them, because everybody, your experience and how you process abuse is different. It's different for everybody. Some people cannot even talk about it. There was several that couldn't really talk about it. The abuse was so heavy, and how it affected them and impacted them was deep. And it impacted me too. When I couldn't sleep at night, I knew I had to do something. I knew I had to go a different route, because I was like, I literally tried to ignore it. I kid you not. I tried to pretend it never happened. I tried to brush it off. Like, I'm a man up. You know, you have all these conversations with yourself to try to ease the pain, or you try to put it in the back of your mind and sort of sweep things away. And for me, and all the work that I've done and all the work that I do, and all the trust and all the faith that people put into me every day, that even in the work that we do in the community, people sharing their abuse, talking about how they've been abused, and talking about how that abuse and those things happen to them. And for me now to be on that other side of the abuse, I knew, for one, that I had to do something. Like, I couldn't not do anything. And even, I don't even know if I would be here having this conversation if the criminal legal system did their job. Mm. I don't know if I would be having this conversation with you. I don't know if I would have released the open letter. I don't know, you know, because for me, what justice looks like for me is that people like that are held accountable.
Right.
Like, for me, what justice looks like for me is that when Black men that are abused, and Black men that are assaulted, Black women that are abused, Black women that are assaulted, kids that are abused, kids that are assaulted, understand, like, you're not alone. And know that it's okay to speak up and to speak out against those things and to have conversations, to know that people now are listening. People now are listening. I think I listened to an interview this morning, Raz B from B2K. Like, they painted this picture that he was crazy. He was a drug user. You know, they did all these things. Even if all that stuff was true, that does not take away from the fact that this man is screaming that he was molested and abused as a child by a grown man over and over. You know, so I'm like, hey, what do we have to clean up our own community?
Well, and I think today we need to listen
Yes.
to our children
Yes.
and the adults who are screaming that there's something wrong. We have a problem.
Yep.
I think people are so, especially in our community, are so quick to sweep things under the rug and just, hey, don't talk about it. Don't worry about it. Just stay away from that person. That doesn't fix it. You know, that is not going to fix it. We have to address the situation head on. Obviously, there's going to need some counseling is going to have to be involved, but also simply hearing each other out first, acknowledging that we have the problem, that the problem exists. I know people who have gotten raped over and over again and have told their mother, and the mother just told them, don't worry about it. Just stay away from that person. That's not going to fix the damage.
Yes.
That's not damage control, you know? Yeah. That we have to wake up to that.
And I think that you're making a change now in this moment. And in this moment, you may not realize the impact that you're going to make, but you're going to make a huge impact because we don't talk about these things in our community. And we need more people like you who are not only active in the community, trying to make changes, actually doing things to make changes, to make it better for our people. But you are also, you're a survivor of what happened to you, and you're allowing people to know this happened. This is not right. We need to hold these leaders accountable for what they're doing to us. And what a lot of people don't realize, 1 in 6 men are sexually assaulted in America. And so it may be more than that, but because men and women are silenced and they feel their situation is going to be diminished and devalued and no one's going to believe them, they don't come forward. And so I honor you and I give you all praise for even being brave enough to come to our show to show the world what happened to you. That takes a lot of courage.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I receive that wholeheartedly. Thank you. And you're so right. We had one of our Black man healing sessions. Abuse has come up a lot. Sexual abuse has come up a lot, and assault and all these things. And I'm certain that the number of Black men that are assaulted and abused sexually is greater because Black men don't report that stuff. We don't talk about it. It's just so underreported. I guarantee you the numbers are very similar to those of women. Absolutely. And Danielle brought up this point to where we have to listen to our kids. And I think what happens is that we continue to pass down these generational curses, and a lot of those curses are silenced. Like, people will silence a child before they even open their mouth. People will silence Black men and Black women before you even open your mouth. Don't even give you an opportunity to speak your truth and say what you have to say. And then often, you know, some of these parents have been abused, and we internalize these things and we normalize abuse. We normalize dysfunction, you know, and we live and we breathe and we sort of thrive in these communities, and we feel like we have to survive, and that dysfunction just happens in general. And then it does happen. But at what point do we say, okay, this is enough? Like, at what point do we look at our own selves, look at our own community, take responsibility for our own community, and say, how do we change these things at home first? Like, how do I address home first? Like, how do I address the things that are going on in the Black community, the harm that is being done by people that are Black, that are in the Black community? Like, how do we start? Like, where do we start addressing those things at? Like, that's really what it is. Like, you have these institutions in place that are directly connected to money. They're connected to power. They're upholding white supremacy, and they're doing more harm to Black people than any other system in this country. And that is really what people have to look at and what people have to think about. And people have to understand that just because someone is in a position of leadership, just because someone is a pastor, a preacher, a politician, does not mean that that person is above reproach. That does not mean that person is a good person. That does not mean that person is not harmful. That does not mean that that person is out for the best interest of the community. And I'm not painting a broad brush for everybody, but this goes on far too often. And we seriously have to take a strong look at ourselves. Like, we really do have to start cleaning up things that are in our community and start standing up against these things that are going on and start believing people when they tell you stuff, and stop being loyal and so ignorant, assuming that these people are men and women of God, and really start looking at, no, you can be a man and woman of God and also have these issues and also have these flaws, you know. But the thing that continues to happen is that people pick and choose who they accept these flaws and faults from. Like, if you're in this position up here, okay, you get a little bit more mercy and a little bit more grace because you're a man of God, you know, or you're in this position of leadership and you got some money, or you may have helped me out at some point in my life. So God forbid if I hold you accountable. And we have to start addressing these things. And I'm just one person, and I appreciate the support that I've received from the community. I appreciate the support that I've received from members from that. I can't tell you how overwhelming this has been, but also how affirming. Like, when I released that letter, I meditated about an hour before I released it. I prayed about 30 minutes. I was nervous. I was anxious, but I said, God, I release this to you and do what you do. You know, and when I did it, I mean, members from that church knew exactly who I was talking about. They hadn't been victims of abuse, but they know their pastor.
That speaks volumes.
I mean,
that speaks volumes.
Yes, you know, and we're talking about, you know, but I challenged them. I said, how are you going to ensure that this doesn't keep happening? How do we stand side by side, shoulder by shoulder, and ensure this doesn't happen? You know, and you know, I've had a lot of them say, yeah, whatever you need us to do, let's do it. You know, we have to stop living in fear. Like, and what fear does is keep us inactive. And a lot of these churches teach you to fear all these things that keep you inactive, keep you ignorant, keep you giving your money, keep you hoping in things, and, you know, but not taking any action, you know, not taking responsibility for self. You know, not understanding the power that you have. Like, we are powerful. Like, alone, you're powerful. But together, people that understand they're powerful, moving in the same direction. Are you kidding me? You know, so I'm excited about it. I am. Like, as nervous as I have been, and this is the most vulnerable I've ever been in my life about anything. Like, I don't share a lot of my personal life. I share some of it, but I don't, you know, I like to keep my life. I like to keep some things to myself. Like, I don't, you know, but this was a challenge, but this is also things that I'm working on as a Black man. Like, I wasn't taught to be vulnerable. You know, it's work. Like, this is a lot of work to do, to sit here and talk about things that make me nervous, things that make me uncomfortable, things that make me sad, things that have hurt me, where I didn't have a language, you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I didn't have the courage 5 years ago, Like people look at Black men and they assume all these things about us. And deep down inside, a lot of us are scared to death. A lot of us are just in straight survival mode. We trying to survive the next day, the next encounter. We're trying to make it out of our community, alive. And I understand that you can't love and you can't love yourself and also be shameful of things that they don't exist in the same space.
That's right.
They can't exist. And so to be able to like dismantle that and continue to like chip away at that and understand that I'm not what happened to me. I'm not the things that I've done in my life, the mistakes and those things that I made, and understand that, if you move in love and you navigate in love, like you're good, because that's where God existed. And I don't believe any of this stuff is a mistake. Like I've had so many affirming, there's so many affirming things that continue to happen on a moment by moment basis. Like I'm allowing it to happen. I'm not questioning it. I'm not surprised by it because I know these are God moments. This is God. This is where God exists. This is where God lives. And, I'm free. I'm becoming more free every day.
Right.
From the things that don't serve me. It doesn't serve me to be a community leader, a community activist, community organizer, and to know that we have somebody in our community that is harming Black men.
Yes.
I haven't had one woman come to me about this person harming her. Wow. I've had Black women come to me about him harming their husbands.
So
go ahead.
I think it's very important for us to explain what sexual assault is. A lot of times we don't understand what sexual assault is. And so that's why we're able to not believe people per se. And so sexual assault is any unwanted touch, any unwanted feeling someone tries to present and displace on you that you do not want. You've specifically said this is not warranted. And so people automatically believe sexual assault is the act of having sex, and it's not always the case. So we need to understand sexual assault happens in many forms, in many ways, and it happens to all people of all races, all genders, all ages. So we have to be very careful when we automatically assume someone's story experience is not true. Mm-hmm. Understand what sexual assault is first.
Absolutely.
And also understand that it's never easy to talk about it after that person has gone through it. And oftentimes you're going to feel embarrassed. Yep. You're going to keep asking yourself, why did this happen to me? Did I do something to provoke this person to even think that way? It's going to be a lot of reflecting moments, a lot of fear, a lot of embarrassment. There's going to be a lot of mix of emotions. So that's the reason why I said earlier, it's important that we support those people who trust you enough to share that moment of vulnerability with you. It's your responsibility to hear them out and to trust what they're saying and be a supportive listening ear for them. Because I'm telling you, and I'm not a Black man, but I can imagine it's not easy to even utter the words sexual assault. That's just not synonymous with Black men, not as far as I've seen growing up. Yeah. And in today's world, however, it's happening at a higher and a higher rate. It's not being reported, like Aisya mentioned earlier, but I can see now that it's happening at an alarming rate. Based on what you're telling us today, when your girlfriends are telling you that their husbands are being assaulted by this man, that speaks volumes to me. This is a huge problem that has not been addressed. And then the other question I have earlier when you were speaking, I didn't want to interject, but how can an entire congregation of people follow a person that they know is a predator?
I think it's easy. I think that not only our country, but a lot of these churches do a really good job again, of brainwashing people, having people put these pastors on these God-like levels, you know, and taking the human out of these people.
Right.
Like the pastors are just people that have issues and that are flawed, and these things happen all the time, but we have yet to address the things that we really need to address in the Black community as a community and as a whole, and to stand up and say, we're no longer going to tolerate this stuff. We're no longer going to allow you to be in these positions where you can harm people. Like, we're not going to allow that. And until we do that as a community, it will continue to happen. You know, we live in a world, we live in a society where people get in these specific positions of power, and who they really, their true self is magnified. And when you can become your true self, you can become a monster and have generations of harm under your belt in the name of Jesus, you know, because you're protected, you know, you're protected, you know, you're not. And when you get to that point, I can't imagine how many victims and survivors. I can't imagine. Like, it hasn't been that long since I released my letter, and I've had a new person come to me last night. A new person last night. And my heart just breaks every time, you know, because these are far worse than what happened to me, and not minimizing anything that happened to me. And, you know, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I'm moving forward with everything that I'm doing. That's why these things have to be addressed.
Absolutely.
And I really, really hope the people that are listening, the communities, Houston, whatever community you're in, if you know someone that has been harmed in any kind of way, if you yourself have been harmed, like, first, like, find some type of support system, whether it's for yourself or for your friend that's been harmed. And then after that, move as a collective to address these things. Like, the power is in the people. The people have the power in this country. The people have the power in the church and in the community. And we have to move forward in addressing this stuff. And a lot of times when these things happen, I get why people don't say anything. Not only will people not believe you, but people will also, behind closed doors, say they support you. And then when it comes time to stand up and stand beside you, they're nowhere to be found. You know, so to stand out and stand boldly and to speak your truth and to speak things that have happened, you have to be courageous, and you have to be prepared sometimes to stand alone and to go at some of these things alone. But know that I know God will give me everything I need in every moment. Always has. Like, I know I'm protected. I know I have everything that I need to move forward and to dismantle these things. But we have to start just as a collective, like, unlearning and relearning things. Like, we have all these learned things that don't serve us, like this silence, like staying silent to abuse, allowing people to harm that are in these positions of power. You know, that we have to find ways to address stuff and to get these people out of these spaces, you know. And the church used to be a safe place, you know, for some people, you know, but I'm certain this abuse is going on as long as the church has existed. Absolutely. Like, I don't believe that this is just something that had popped up in the last couple of years. We now hear about it and hear more stories and see more things about it, but you also don't see a lot of justice that has been served to these people in these positions of power. Like, think about the Catholic Church. You know, think about all those things, how a lot of them were acquitted. Nothing really happened. They found a way to get off. So it does take a collective. It does take the people. It does take the people in these institutions to stand up and say, we no longer want you here. we don't want you here anymore. You're harming too many people, you know.
And it's so brave. Like, you're so brave. Um, and the fact that you said we need to start speaking up, I will speak up about my story because I've never publicly said anything. I was molested, and I didn't think that I was. For years, I didn't believe I was. And it takes a toll on you and affects you in so many ways, in so many aspects. So when I said I honor you, I do, because it's so many people who have been molested and been touched and been sexually assaulted, and they're so afraid to share their experiences because of how people react to them. And it still bothers me to this day. But sharing our stories is very important, because sharing our stories will allow other people to see that this has happened to so many people. And I minimized my situation because I compared it to others, and it didn't look the same way as it looked for other people. But it wasn't something that I asked for. And so anytime someone harms you or touch you in any sexual way, and it's not something you want, you need to speak up about it. And so, Dave, just because you're here today, it gives me the courage. I wrote about it in a book, but I've never publicly said anything. And we've had shows and we've talked about so many people in regards to their experiences. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience and giving me the courage to speak up about my experience.
I just want to hug you. I do. Like, that's brave, that's powerful. And, you know, welcome to healing, you know, the parts of you that you haven't healed, because speaking things and putting them out in the universe is so powerful. And dismantling the shame behind saying, yeah, that happened to me. I didn't want it. I didn't allow it, you know, but you're here, you're a survivor, you know, you can talk about it, and you have no idea how many women, men you're going to release, and that you're going to encourage too, like even in your story, because like, you know, it is like this, and people don't understand how, even with you, like it happened to you as a child, but even talking about that, it does something, like you're reliving that, and it's resurfacing in your body. It's abuse. It's in your, becomes part of your body, becomes part of your cells and it becomes part of you, and you have to find a way to work through that, you know, and there's no time frame on it. But I can feel everything you said. I can feel the pain from that. I can, you know, I felt everything you said, and it's just such a great reminder of, and for people to understand how serious this is, and how we have to do a better job at not just listening, but taking action when people say, I was harmed, I was abused, and hold space and have spaces that are brave spaces for people to come say, yo, I was abused, you know, and for people to say, well, what do we need to do? How do I help you? Like, how do we help each other? And thank you for being brave, and thank you for trusting me and allowing me to just hold space for you today, and just, you know, you're freeing parts of you. You know, I think it's free, you know, and today, believe it or not, has been so powerful. I was nervous going in here, you know, because it's just, you know, you're talking about these things and also being vulnerable. Like, I'm just not, you know,
this is a different space for you, and I love it. And it's so affirming, because this is the entire reason why I created the King's Edition. I mean, Sistas Talk does enough. Sistas Talk Podcast does enough, but I said to myself, men need a platform to be heard. We want everybody's voice to be heard. And women, we talk all the time about our trauma and our abusive relationships, and oh, it's hard dating. You hear us talking about it on TV, we're everywhere, but you don't too often, especially our Black men, see you guys being open, transparent, vulnerable. So again, I'm just so very honored, Dave Lewis, that you chose Sistas Talk Podcast to share your story first with us. And we respect your healing process. And I know today you and both Aisya have encouraged a lot of people who have also experienced this form of abuse to set themselves free. I know it's not an easy process, and I know that also people relive the trauma each and every day sometimes of their lives. So you two are very courageous. I've learned a lot tonight in today's segment, and my heart goes out to both of you guys, and I'm praying for constant healing for you. And I know the more you talk about it, the more you share your story, that's just one step closer to ultimate healing. And for everybody in the audience, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to read your live comments tonight. As you can see, this is a very sensitive topic, and I wanted to give all my energy towards that. I don't want anybody to leave. I'm going to remove everybody from the live so that I can share the face of the open letter that Dave Lewis has provided. We will never reach a level of healing if we don't talk about these things. And I think, having these type of open, vulnerable conversations for the world to see is just going to bring us one step closer to evolving into those people that we need to be. Because inside of you is who you should be, but you have to take the necessary steps. I love throughout this entire segment how you said, hey, I respect this process. Like, you didn't take away from the experience. You didn't ask yourself why. And maybe you did, but you've now reached a point where you've accepted that this was the ordained divine step that you must take to reach the destination that you have to travel. And we all have one that's already set for us. So I want to thank you one last time, Dave, for coming on the show, for being so transparent. And I can't thank you enough. And I can't wait to see where you'll go. The places you will go, because you are owning your truth, and that's incredible within itself.
Yeah, I want to thank both of y'all just for this. I don't know if I could have picked a better place to just have my first conversation. And Danielle, I just respect you so much. Your book, all that she does, just in the community, in life, how she shows up, just such a powerful Black woman. And I just, any opportunity.
My husband can hear that. Say it one more time.
He knows.
I don't know if he knows.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he knows. But yeah, just any opportunity I can to just support in any way, because it's reciprocated 10 times, and so, and Aisya, thank you. I'm gonna get your book too.
Thank you.
So I can't wait to read it. And just thank you for your bravery and being transparent. And I hope y'all know that this is divine.
Yes.
Today, now, this moment, the path that y'all both are on, it's all aligned. And it's to improve humanity. It's to improve the lives of Black people. It's to change our world, in a sense, like our own world. And so I'm grateful. Tonight was great. It was therapeutic.
Yes.
And it helped me to to just keep moving forward, and it was encouraging. And I hope that people that are watching, people that will see this, start to believe people when they say things have happened to them, and not only believe them, but hold space for them and ask how you can support them through these process, because some people suffer in silence because they are afraid. Most of the men that I've spoken to, they just don't have the courage to come forward. And I get it. Even for me, like, I did question myself. I did ask, like, why did that happen? You know what I'm saying? Just all these things that was not my fault. Like, none of those things were not my fault. Like, I'm not going to take responsibility for your predatory actions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not going to take responsibility for that. Like, no, you need to take responsibility for that.
Right.
And so when I work through that, and it's still a work in progress. I'm still in therapy. I'm still working through these things, and still, I have to, because when you open yourself up and you're vulnerable, all this stuff comes at you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just one thing, it's everything, and so being able to just work through that stuff has been so powerful. And this is part of the process too, because I do want to continue to talk about it, continue to share these stories, and encourage more people to do the same and not live in shame, and release yourself and set yourself free, because you're going to carry this stuff into every relationship.
Yes.
You're going to pass it down to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, find a way to break these curses, And so, but I can't thank y'all enough.
Well, thank you so much for being here, being vulnerable, and sharing your experiences, and letting people know they're not alone. And so I do want to make a comment and let people know, if you're in a relationship and your partner asks for sex or any form, any way, or sexually assaults you, just because you're in a relationship does not mean it's not sexual assault, because it is. If you say no, it is assault.
Agreed.
Yep.
Most definitely. So, guys, we want to thank you so much, the audience, for tuning in, for your very much needed and informative comments. Just your support for Dav Lewis tonight, because God knows that you're gonna need it. You're gonna need all the support. We got your back right here. I only have to say that. Behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, I got your back. Okay. So,
Yeah.
shout out to Nikki's House of Cheesecakes, because if it was not for Nikki, Dave and I wouldn't even know each other. So I want to thank you, Nikki. Make sure you go grab her some cheesecakes, girl. I'm gonna have to get a clip for you so I can run your commercial. But anyway, Aisya, thank you so much for your transparency tonight. And I guess, guys, we'll see you again on Sunday. We have a few minutes. I'm gonna remove you guys from the stream, and I'm gonna show them the flyer for Saturday. Don't go anywhere, Dave. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I guess I lose my volume. But anyway, for the flyer that you just saw, Aisya, you can let them know the event on Saturday.
Sure. So tomorrow we're going to do an event called The Truth About Black History. And we're going to go into detail and give you examples of inventors, artists, musicians, people who we had no idea invented things that exist in our world today. And we need to bring more awareness to who we are as a culture, as a people, because we literally have not known a lot of the things that exist.
Seriously.
Such as Gladys Mae West, who was the primary inventor of the GPS system.
GPS that you use it every day.
I
And
don't know that. Wow.
we're definitely are trying our best to educate our community and bring awareness to these different topics. We're going to have a comedian there to bring some laughter and joy.
Comedian Rail from H-Town.
And so we're super excited to be able to host this event. This is the first event of many to come.
Yes, definitely. So make sure you guys tune in. I do still see some comments rolling in, and we want to thank you guys for listening to us, supporting us. I want to thank all the guests that we've ever had on the show since 2019. You guys are amazing. Dave, you are amazing.
Yes.
You did your thing. You shared light on your truth and transparency. I know you're going to open up the doors. Open letter is synonymous to you opening up the hearts and the souls and the mindsets of our young men who so truly need it. So guys, before we go, I'm going to run a little promo clip of the new Sistas Talk line. Check it out, guys, and y'all have a good night.